Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Do You Remember podcast, the podcast that takes us back to happier times as we do a deep dive into something nostalgic. I'm Adam Anwar, I'm your host, and today I'm joined by stand-up comedian Tom Rhys Evans.
The crowd goes wild.
And today we're going to be talking about 1999's American Pie. So for the people who don't know, can you give us like a brief synopsis, Tom, of what American Pie is?
Well, there's two synopses. There's the ones that they gave, and there's the one that I have. The one that they gave was young men blossoming into full adulthood and making their way through this strange and crazy world. For my money, the synopsis would be young men making their way through a strange and crazy world, kind of a little bit raping a girl, and then moving on swiftly without really talking about it much.
Yeah. So I mean, we'll very much dive into this over the course of the episode, but I mean, we'll just quickly touch on it now. It is quite a contentious film, looking at eyes of adults and have very much changed in society. Like at the time when I watched it, I felt very much differently to how I watch it now, and still rose tinted a little bit through the eyes of nostalgia, but you're kind of looking at it a lot more skeptically now. But yeah, so let's touch on it, how we first saw it then for now. When was the first time that you saw American Pie?
You know what? Actually, now that you asked me that, I remember there was a video shop down by my local newsagents, and they did videos. And I remember the first time that I got away with getting a video, because I was about 12, 13 when this came out.
Yeah.
So probably, when this came out on like DVD or video, I think it was video as well, because I'm 100 years old. I went down there and I got South Park the movie, and I just remember just basically looking up at the person who was serving in the newsagents and just being like, please can I see it? But just saying it with my eyes, like I really want to see it. All my friends in school are talking about it. I'm the only one who hasn't seen it. I've got enough problem being ostracized for being different. Please can I just have this one little bit of comfort that I've seen South Park, and then and then I could go down there and get whatever I want. So I saw American Pie, and it was a very different time.
So what year are we talking about here? Like 2000?
Yeah, it would have been 2001 or 2000, wouldn't it? Because it came out in the cinemas in 1999. So but I imagine it was a summer thing. So by the next year, it would have been out on DVD. So 2000, 2001, something like that. I would have been 12, 13 years old, literally who this like sort of film was aimed at, or just getting into it.
Definitely, I think I'm kind of in the same boat as you here, because at the time, 11 years old, I remember going to the cinema with my brother to watch something like Scooby-Doo or something. I don't know what. No, that was a few years later. But we was watching something like that. I remember seeing like American Pie was advertised, and I reckon like wasn't for me as an 11-year-old. Like I wasn't allowed to watch it, but something that I would like to watch. And then like a few years later, it came on like Sky Movies, and I remember like 1.5 or something. Mum was out of the room and channels. I stumped that scene. The pie, I'm like, oh, this is the American Pie film. Like by this time, I'm like, a bit older, the same age as you would have been. And I'm like, oh wow, like I'm being a bit naughty watching this film. Like I think it's like a 15 or maybe an 18. I'm not too sure. I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna watch it. And then I'm seeing this lad fuck a pie, and like my mum was in the net. I feel really awkward because like I wanted to watch it, but it's a guy fucking a pie. Like, do I want to watch it? And I definitely don't want my mum to catch me.
No, which version did you see? Because there was two versions of that scene, and I saw the unrated version. So the first version, which is the one I saw on Netflix last night when I had to rewatch this film. Thank you very much for that. Was when he's just sort of in the corner, just having a little party by himself, and then he turns around and the pie dish is just like on him. But the scene that I saw, which was the unrated and I'm doing air quotes here, unrated version, was him on, like, the pie was still on the counter, and he was just full on, like, penis in.
He's lying down on it.
He's lying down on it, yeah. Is that the one that you saw as well?
Yeah, do you know what? I completely forgot about that. You've mentioned it just now, and yeah, that's exactly what I saw, him lying on top of the pie, and like I forgot all about that until now, yeah. So that was my exposure to it. So like what? So that again, we won't look at it through modernized for just yet. We'll go into that later on. But at the time, the appeal for you watching American Pie.
That was hilarious. I mean, it was like just in that sort of. It would seem like around that time. I think it was probably because we were going into the millennium and people had a sort of fuck it, like, you know, let's just do whatever, let's party like it's 1999 and all this. Like, everyone was just hyper sexualized, like, like men wanted sex, women wanted sex. Like, I think that was also like the whole trope of like that stand-up, which is like got really popular around that time, which is, oh, you know that women want sex too, right? You know, that whole thing. Do you remember that sort of, like, everyone just sort of had a joke about that? And everyone was just so hypersexualized. Like, it was almost like a mini 80s boom where, you know, cocaine started becoming super cheap and everyone was just doing it. So, but I think it was, instead of cocaine, it was just sex. And there was just sex everywhere you looked, on TV and adverts, you know, all the programs and stuff like that. You had Kat Deely presenting SMTV Live and stuff like that. You know, it was just everywhere, you know. So I think that's why that film came out at that time. And again, look at it through today's eyes, because it's gone the other way now, isn't it?
Definitely. I think American Pie it floats this weird line where it's very much of its time in the sense that stuff you really probably shouldn't do now and wouldn't do now, but it is still timeless in some of the aspects in the film as well. So I mean, it goes through the extremes, I find. But again, we'll touch on that more later on. But I remember that appeal for me, like wanting to watch this film with like, is this what teenagers are like? Because like, I was 12, 13 at the time, and these like 17, 18-year-olds, and I'm like, is this what I'm supposed to be like? Is this what like? Is this what teenagers like? But yeah, let's talk about the actual film, and we'll go from the beginning, and we'll move on, and that we can now look at it through modern eyes, I suppose. So we have that scene, which I think is a great opening scene, where that down. We come into the room and Jim's there, and he's trying to watch porn, and it's that old scrambled channel that doesn't really exist anymore, I don't think.
No, but the closest that we had to it as well in the UK, I think, was Channel 5. We had Channel 5, which was always kind of out of, like, it depends on where you were living. You would get a better signal, which is weird.
And it had those films, didn't it? Like about 10 at night, they'd start playing like basically softcore porn, didn't they? Really, like
they did. They always had like the shittest storyline as well. Like, they were trying to be like a thriller. Like, they were trying to be Basic Instinct is what they were, but they failed miserably most of the time. Like, I had to watch this on Netflix last night, and if there was a way that I could like scrub it off my watch list, you know what I mean? Because I'm probably going to start getting all these teen movies like banged at me. Like, you know, I feel like Netflix is a little bit ashamed of me, to be honest, if I'm being honest. You know. You know. I feel like you're a little bit ashamed of me. Where have you gone?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. You're back now.
Yeah, you cut out a little bit there. That was, I mean, maybe I cut out, but yeah. So sorry, go to that again. You said that they're trying to be like Basic Instinct.
Yeah, no, I felt like, you know, on Channel 5, they were just, it was always murder and sex, like, which, to be honest, is a bit shit. Like, I remember going on a going on a summer holiday once, and it was around the same time, and I went to Portugal, and they had like that sort of holiday cable package. Did you ever get that when you went on holiday? Like, they had Cartoon Network and stuff like that. But then
Not that I remember.
Well, it was, it wasn't like Sky or anything like that. It was like this weird, like sort of thin television remote and stuff. And you could get like during the day you could get Sky News. You get like a variety of different channels. So you could get some German channels, you could get some French channels, Spanish channels. Like it was like a little bit of like European cable or whatever. So I discovered, because I was obviously well keen to carry on watching Cartoon Network when my parents had gone to bed. So I went on there, and then I found that actually, late at night, I think it was Canal Plus was the name of the channel, and they put full on hardcore pornography on at late at night, and I just remember that was just the best thing ever. Like, it may have been German.
That must have been a right eye opener for a young teenage boy.
We didn't have, times are different back then. We didn't have these 3Gs and these 4Gs. Like, genuinely, we didn't have internet porn back then. I think that's as well, like, we didn't have the internet porn that we do nowadays. Like, nowadays, you can literally just go on your phone and you can access all of the porn. And that's it. And we didn't have that back in those times. We had dial-up porn, which was really proper shit, because like, talk about buffering for a video, but you had to like buffer for a photo, and that's even worse. You just get a head, and you get really into like necks and collarbones, because that's what you'll see for the first 3 to 4 minutes of your wank anyway.
And that's what Jim's doing here. He's trying to get his access to it, and he's got to do it through these like dodgy screens. And his mum comes in, and I think this is like a really great like setting the scene for the movie, because like it's showing that like he's a bit of a perv. He's kind of desperate for it any way that he can get it, even though it's like a blood. Like he's still a young boy at the time who has to deal with like kissing his mum goodnight, and she takes the pillow off, and we see the sock for the first time. That is
actually, I went proper deep into that particular scene, because not only so if it's not her who takes the pillow off, so she comes in and she's like, "Oh, what's wrong with the cable?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm just trying to watch a documentary on birds."
Channel,
like the classic like thing. And then the dad comes in, and he's like, "Oh, what's wrong with the people?" Like Eugene Levy in this, by the way, makes this film. Like, I think he was definitely the best character in this film. So he comes in, and he's like, "Oh, what's wrong with the TV, honey?" And what happens is, because I rewound this scene, so Jason Biggs has the pillow over his junk, and he has the remote in the other hand. Yeah. And what Eugene Levy's character does is he grabs both the remote and the pillow simultaneously for seemingly no reason. no real reason why he would grab the pillow. It's not as if the pillow and the remote control were connected. And then it's like, oh, he's got his cock in a sock. Oh, it's that bit. Oh, no. Yeah. No,
definitely. It's such a classic scene and a classic visual that like he's got the sock over him, and like his mum's disgusted, and his dad's trying to play it cool, and he's starting to realize, oh, I'm going to need to start having some birds and the bees conversation with him, and then that starts to develop over the rest of the scene. And then,
quite frankly, those birds and the bees conversations are the best bits of the film. Like,
oh, definitely. those are the bits that really like tie this film along, don't they? No, yeah.
I just love the opening bit though, when he's just like, because the TV is just going like, "Oh, you're a dirty girl, you're a dirty boy," and he's just like talking back to the TV. And then I don't know if you've ever had a wank, but I've never like talked back to the video. And then he gets that one little like the frame changes and goes, "That is a tit. That is definitely a tit." And I'm just that really made me laugh.
Definitely, it's ongoing commentary, and then the guy starts talking. He's like, "Hey, shut the fuck up, man."
Yeah, but then when his mum comes in, and like she starts, because she's the one who first starts to realize, like, "Oh, I think he's trying to watch some illegal channels here," which is how she phrases it. And like that's the weird bit, because isn't that isn't that weird? Like, I don't know if you ever had like a moment like that with like your mum or your dad where you were watching something and then they came in. Did you ever have a moment like that?
Luckily not, no.
I had a few moments.
Right, go on.
Oh, I don't know how many people listen to this. These are some proper not fun stories for me to tell. All right, so
It's just me and you, mate. Just me and you.
Yes. I remember once I was watching Caligula
Right.
on Channel 4 late at night, and apart from like all the scenes where like heads are getting chopped off and like there's like lots of blood and stuff like that, there's also quite a lot of naked boobies in there as well, and a bit of bush because they had enough bush to cover the things and stuff. And so I was watching that, and my dad came in. He was just like, but he didn't realize at all. And I was like, oh yeah, okay, good night, Dad. Like that was like the opening into it. I do remember one time, and this is the worst. This is the worst thing that's possibly happened, and why I sort of was just like when the mother was confronting Jim about it, and she was just like, "No, I think it's watching some illegal." And in my head, I'm just like, "So fucking what? Leave the room, woman! Can't you tell what's going on?" And
yeah.
So I was just like, I couldn't have been more than like 10.
10.
And I was just in the front room. I was like 10, 11, like early adolescence, like really early adolescence. Like basically I'd started getting boners. That's what happened. And I was just in the room on my own. I wasn't playing with myself. I was just sort of, I was just sort of looking at it, and I'd just be like, oh, okay, so that's how that works, like that sort of thing. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Please tell me you know what I mean. Please.
I understand. Yeah, you're trying to say that you're starting to establish it down there that you're just realizing, yeah.
Exactly. And I was just having a look, and then I just hear a fucking. So I've got a boner in my hand, and I'm having a look, and then I just hear the worst sound in the world: a knock at the fucking window. So I hear a knock at the window, and I look, and obviously I'm like wide-eyed, just like a crack addict who's just like, been caught masturbating in a fucking like field or whatever by the farmer, and I just look at, and she just looks at me straight in the eye, and then just points at me like that, and then walks off, and as if to say like, I see what you're doing, I do not approve, I'm not going to do anything further. Oh, I just had to relive that.
I feel your shame and I feel your embarrassment. Right, let's move on quickly so you don't need to linger on that feeling much longer. So, scene that we see, yeah, I can imagine. The next scene that we see is it's like an establishing shot in that we see Jim and he's talking to us, and again, we start like he's a bit of a horny pervert, but again, he's still just a kid because he's talking about the Little Mermaid, and he's like, "Oh, the Little Mermaid, she's hot," and like it's kind of setting the scene well, I think, that like, yes, he is a pervert, but yeah, he's still basically a child.
Yeah, I guess I that's the way that you looked at it. I sort of I think I looked at it through the modern lens where I was just like, he's perving on a fucking 15-year-old chick. Like, but what made me laugh about that is that Oz's forehead made me question the age range of all of the cast, because I was just like, hang on, how? Because Oz was so big, I thought he must be in his like early 30s at least. But no, they're all like, I checked the ages. So Alison Hannigan is probably the oldest, even though she looks the youngest. She's 25, and then Sean William Scott is 23, and he doesn't look 23.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? He looks like a full-grown, like, cut jaw like that. Jason Biggs, he's 21. And Chris Klein is actually the youngest. He's 20. Can you believe that? Yeah. But yeah, no, I know what you mean. It does just go to like show like how much Hollywood has grown in the past 21 years. Where they're just like, yeah, Ariel, man, she's so hot. Like, fuck, it's weird. It is weird.
Definitely, and then we start to like establish all the rest of like the main characters. So we've got like Vicky and Kevin. They're in the car. They're opening like the college letters to see if they got in. And then we start to establish that they're going to unis in different states. So straight away, we see that there's going to be some kind of conflict here because the couple who are together, they're going to be going off into different unis. Who else do we see?
And Tara Reid, chubby cheeked, so full of promise, and she's just so cute. She's got the girl next door vibes and stuff like that. And
yeah, I had such a huge crush on Tara Reid in these days. I'm telling you.
Oh yeah, no, everyone did. Everyone did until she got that kind of weird looking boob job. Sort of like that's that. I think that was the start of her downfall when she got some bad plastic surgery and it got out as well. Like I think there wasn't there like a topless photo of her knocking about and.
Not that I know of. My understanding was like she became like a major socialite, didn't she? And she just kind of went off the rails. That was my understanding.
Yeah, socialite is the posh word for drug slag.
Very possibly, definitely a pisshead by the looks of it. But yeah, we meet Stifler as well. Who you said Eugene Levy's the star of the film, and I don't really disagree. But I would put him behind Stifler for me because as a kid. Stifler to me was like he seemed like a real character because he seemed like that kind of arsehole that you know, and like you're kind of friends with him, but because he is a dickhead, and like I thought he was for me the MVP because even though you're not supposed to like him, I didn't like it. It's like when I watch wrestling and I like the bad guys in wrestling. I don't like them because I like them because they're playing such a good character. It was the same with Stifler for me. Like I really appreciated how much of a dickhead he was playing him, and especially Sean William Scott.
This is the thing with you and Stifler is, you know, obviously anybody who wasn't. I've gigged with Adam, and like Steve Stifler is the person that he brings up all the time in the green room, like just how like he wants to be like him, and he's the first time he saw him, and you know, he's a real you know person of influence for you. I find was what I've known about
for
you.
me.
Yeah, it's like I agree with you. He's definitely the main character for me, but for me, like my school days were pretty shit. And so, like anybody who would like kind of remind me of someone in school would not be favorable in my mind when I'm watching the show. Like I get the like that's the thing because I know we're sort of going to touch on it later, but Stifler's journey was the main through story of like the rest of the films and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And the reason is because I have this written down in one of my 17 pages of notes that who is actually the main character in this film? Like, who is the protagonist? Who would you say?
I mean, I'd say like for this film, it's Jim, but I do kind of agree with you that Stifler kind of overtakes it after this one.
See, I remember asking my sister, who is older than me. She's 4 years older than me. And I remember it was just on at one point. This is when I was a little bit like I'd already watched it, and it was like a couple of years later. And I remember rewatching it, and I just remember saying to my sister, "Who's the main character?" And she said it was Kevin.
That's interesting, actually.
It is interesting because like Kevin is the guy who makes the really like the speech, and like you know he's sort of like he is sort of like the guy. He also has like a pretty main because they're all like they could all be A, B, or C stories. All of their little tales and stuff like that. A, B, C, or D. But yeah, is Kevin the main character? Because that's what's thing. And I actually and this goes towards the end because I remember writing it down again because I wrote this down like. So Kevin wants to have sex with Tara Reid's character, but she wants him to say, "I love you," and they both sort of. I liked that. I thought it actually was like quite an emotionally mature part of the film where like their different expectations of what love means and what sex is. Like they sort of paralleled each other, which is really good because, you know, even though this film was written by a man, directed by a man, produced by a man, like it did still have some female-esque themes, especially what's the character's name? Natasha Lyonne character.
Oh yeah, Vicky's friend. I can't remember.
I really like it's like rewatching Friends now, and I think for me the best character is Phoebe. Like I watch Friends now, and I think Phoebe's the best character. She sort of like doesn't really get involved or anything like that. She's just in her own world. She's trying to make a way, and she's having to deal with all these massive personalities, and she's just like, oh, floopy floop, you know. And so for me, Natasha Lyonne's character, like the cool voice of reason, but like kind of presented as a bit of a weirdo, but like she's not like, you know, bullied in the way that like people were bullied in those sorts of films. Like nobody's like throwing a balloon full of blood at her head and calling her a filthy feminist or whatever. Like she's you know, she's just like, she's definitely like she's definitely the coolest in my opinion.
Yeah. She is, because this film can get a lot of shit, and it can rightly so get a lot of like.
It will, and it has.
But like, for all the characters, Natasha Lyonne's is the one who's the most self-assured. She's the most confident, but she's not showed in like a cocky or arrogant way. She's just going along with her own business. She's helping her friends out where needs be. And she's kind of just like a background character, but very self-assured and that I really like that. And it made her like not a dominant character, but made her a character that like can't really be fucked with, can't be touched. She is what she is, regardless of what's going on around her.
I liked her line as well when Tara Reid's character was saying like, "I just want everything to be perfect, you know, when we have sex, and it's all got to be all the lines, all the stars have got to be aligned." And then Natasha's character goes, "It's sex, not a space shuttle launch." And I thought that was pretty good, funny. Like there were genuinely a few good jokes, and there's probably about 7 or 8 good jokes in this film that still hold up, which is a shame.
Hey, 100%, and we'll get to some of those in a bit. But yeah, as you're saying, like Kevin, you think like Kevin could be the main character. Because I think one of the next scenes that comes up is the diner scene, and like Jim's again. We're starting to see that like Jim he's here as a pervert. He's talking about I want to see Nadia at this party tonight, and I want to chat to her. But he's showing his vulnerability, showing that he's still a kid. He's saying, "Oh, do you reckon she'll like my hair like this or like this?" And it's like exactly the same. It's no different.
That was the first. That was the first time. So like I said, I got 17 pages of notes. It's only A5 paper, so it's not that much. But that was the first when they did the breath check, and then they handed out chewing gum. And first of all, before I go on to Jason Biggs' character, if I was in a restaurant and the person sitting behind me started loudly gargling mouthwash, and then spat it out into a cup, I would fucking kick off. I'd be like, "What are you fucking doing, mate? This isn't a fucking bathroom. Like, that's so fucking gross." Like, especially in these times as well. Like, you don't want to be gargling with your mouth open.
True.
COVID going everywhere. But no, that was the Jason Biggs when he did that slightly adjustment of the hair. That was the first time that I wrote, that takes me back. And I've written that about 7 or 8 times, like the little things. And but yeah, when they then go out of the restaurant and Oz just goes like, "Warm apple pie," and he holds his 2 fingers up. Did you notice that? Like he holds his 2 fingers up, like just to really just fucking smash that joke straight into your face. It's like he's talking about fingering. But at the time when I first watched it, I hadn't done any of that stuff, you know?
Of course.
So when I originally heard warm apple pie, I was like, okay, warm apple pie. If it actually meant anything at all. And to be honest, like now that I'm a little bit older, I would say that it was not really an apple pie. I'd say it was more like a berry pie. You know what I mean? Like a really a thick, muscly berry pie, rather, because an apple pie has sort of got like if I stuck my finger my fingers in a consenting lady, and it felt like apple pie. Like there'd be a lot of like lumps and like stuff like that. I'd be worried about cysts or possibly some sort of with something worse. I don't think this is the part in the podcast to bring up ovarian cancer, but like Jesus Christ, what's wrong with me?
When I was in this film, seeing that scene, I've always read it as like he's asking Oz because to him, Oz is like the really experienced one. But in reality, Oz isn't really experienced. He's new to this as well. He's trying to play up to being like kind of know it to the he kind of gets rid of very quickly. But like trying to play up to it, but he doesn't know himself. So I like Byline in the sense that it gives away that he's not an expert. I mean, and that they're all chances at the end of the day.
Yeah, what you're saying is that he was essentially the Jay of in-betweeners of his time.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, without being the over the top. Yeah,
but the thing is that Oz, like when I don't want to, no, because the next scene isn't that the next scene where Oz is in the car.
Yes, in the next is the party scene. Yeah.
Yeah, and when he's putting all these slimy moves on and he looks slimy as well, like his hands all greased back.
Yeah.
And then he just says the line, "Suck me, beautiful." I had forgotten.
Yeah,
I had forgotten that was coming, and it's lucky that I'm alone in this house right now because I watched that last night at about 10 o'clock at night, and he said, "Suck me, beautiful," and I genuinely screamed. That whole party scene, what I like about that scene is that at least there is an accurate representation of what teenagers that age should look like in this film. Because when the band gets to the party and they're like knocking on the door and they're like, "We're here for the party," and then Stifler's just like, "What? There's no party." And then a man who looks about 42 comes on his shoulders, just like, "Dude,
party!
This is a great party," which is something that normal people say at parties when they're having a good time. They are just shouting out how good a party this is. They're not like getting involved in the conversation or drinking that makes it a good party. Everyone's just stood around just going, "This is a great party, this is a great party, this is a great party." But yeah, I like that there was actual representation, because Alison Hannigan, even though she was 25, she did genuinely look 17.
She did,
in this film. Yeah. But yeah, no, I was when Oz said that "Suck Me Beautiful" line, I properly screamed out loud. And definitely. Just like, oh.
Yeah, so the notes I've got for that is like, first of all, like this house is fucking huge that they're having this party at. And I was thinking at the time, I'm 12 years old on a council estate in Bolton. And
sorry, I didn't mean to laugh.
Any house party that I have ever been, even at this age, I've been to some nice house parties now because I'm a bit older, but even at this age, I've been to a house party at a house as nice as this one that these kids are having here. And like, we're going through it and like, oh, she's called Jessica, Natasha Lyonne's character.
Yeah, Jessica.
Yeah, Jessica and Vicky are at the party and like Stifler goes over to him. He's like, bitches. Like, you kind of seeing that like he's not friends with them. But the Germans at the party, and he's like, "What the fuck are you doing here?" And then the band geeks like get turned away, and like when I saw the band geeks get turned away, I was like, "Okay, that's the first time in this party that it's kind of felt real to me that like someone is not invited to the party."
Yeah.
Because at this point, that is me. I'm on the outside of this party, going, "Oh, I really want to get involved in this as well." And oh wait, no, I can't because I'm on a council estate, and you're in this massive fucking house in East Great Falls.
Great Falls, yeah. No, I know what you mean, but because there was house parties when around that age when I was in school, but I was never invited to any of them. Oh my god! If anybody listens to this, they're gonna think that I was such a loser. Nowadays, I do get invited to those parties. I just don't go because I'd rather do other things.
Well, yeah, I'd recommend you don't anymore, to be honest.
No, exactly.
Yeah, a bit on the dodgy side, but yeah, I enjoyed the scene, and sorry, just to touch back on what you mentioned before, like the scene where "Suck me, beautiful." What did you say? God. Suck me, beautiful. Like, that is such a great line from, like, a very bad perspective. Like, in the perspective of, like, it's a great line because it's shitty. Is like, it's not a great line because, like, you want to, you want to be like that. It's a great line because it shows, like, what an amateur it is, and it really gives away. And, like, because she laughs at it as well. She, like, blows it off and, like, says, listen, you've got a lot to learn and all this stuff. And I really like it from that aspect.
Well, they set her up, didn't they, as a college chick, and I think that's kind of like, so Stifler is like the sexer of the school. Like, he's the one who like has bundles of sex, even though you never actually see him.
Yeah,
like you only see him like kind of nearly get laid with that one girl.
Yeah,
and then he drinks the thing. So like, but he does have good game though. You see, like, he has good game in that. Like, she's like, I'm not sure, and then he just says stuff, and then like she's like, okay, I'm sure now. And so I feel like the outward Stifler, which he says, that's the sort of thing that he would have said that he said in a sort of very Jay from Men Between Us type way.
Yeah.
And then says "Suck me beautiful," and then but it's funny then because when he's recounting that story at the party after she's like, let's get you home, like, it's so cute, and then he recounts the story, and Stifler's just like, ha ha, that's so crazy, because probably because he's thinking like, oh, I wish I would have said that, you know what I mean?
Yeah, very possibly. Yeah, definitely. So, like, and again, you mentioned that they called the college chick. That's a kind of a key theme in this film. Is like they call everyone like something chick. The ones who aren't main characters, they don't really have names. So, like, the college chick doesn't have a name. She's just college chick.
Yeah.
And then the
jazz chick, yeah.
The jazz chick. The girl who Sherman spends the night with but doesn't do anything with is the central chick. Like, they're all just something chick. And I feel like that's kind of a part of the sexist thing where they're not humanizing these women. They're kind of objectifying them by just referring to them as, like, not by their name, but like by kind of a vague term of what they are. You're just a college chick. You're just a central chick and all this stuff. And so I kind of see the problematic nature of that there. But
at the same time, though, in you know, not to get all proper film clubby about it, you have them acting that way. You have all these boys acting like boys. Sure. And then when you have the two women talking together, the two main characters, Tara Reid and Lynn, what's her second name? With Jessica and Vicky. When you have, with Natasha, that's one. When you have Jessica and Vicky talking together, they're always having like really mature, like thought out conversations.
Yeah.
And they're not just going like, oh my God, I just really love boys and I really want to suck a dick. You know, they're probably like, well, you know, it's this, and then it's that, and then there's a little bit of this, and you know, what was that line that she just said? Oh yeah, the line that I said. What's funny is that there are a lot of problematic things in this film that could be seen as problematic. You wouldn't think that Natasha would be a part of that, but there is one line where she says, "He has a penis. He's a man." That's kind of iffy nowadays to say things like that. You can lose your job over saying something like that nowadays, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, true.
So she says that, but they do. That's what I'm saying. They have like mature conversations, whereas the boys are just like tits, pussy, ass.
Do you know what? I hadn't really like broke that down as much before, but yeah, what you're saying makes total sense. Like, they're talking about stuff like, emotions and like, I really love him and stuff like that, and I want it to be perfect. And she's even talking about logistical things in the future, like, oh yeah, he's only a few hours drive away. He's going to be in I'm going to be in Ithaca, and he's going to be in, I think, Michigan.
It's only 7 hours away.
Yeah, and she's talking about like real life things, whereas like whenever you flip over to the boys things, it's always something very immature. And I like it in a sense that it shows how dumb they are, these boys. Like, I get it when people watch this and like they think, oh, these lads are cool or anything, but I kind of don't think you look at them as cool lads. I kind of think you do look at them as like dorky.
They're
and,
all
like,
goofballs, yeah.
Yeah, and like,
well, that's the thing, is that at that age that is true, because when you're a boy, you've got so much testosterone just raging through your body, and testosterone is such a powerful hormone that makes you do such stupid and say such stupid things, and like, it's crazy. Like, I've listened to a lot of podcasts about like trans men, so women transitioning into men, and when they start taking testosterone like regularly, and they start getting all these like feelings and like just hypersexuality and stuff like that, because obviously like when they first start taking it, their body can't really cope, so they sort of deal with it in the same way that a teenage boy deals with this overload of testosterone,
Right,
and they're just like their reaction to it is just like, holy shit.
I mean, I don't really know a lot about what you said, but it sounds interesting to me, and I mean that's something that I do want to look into actually. So I mean, obviously you've done your research and I've not, so that's something I want to look into. That sounds interesting. But so anyway, so Kevin and Vicky, we see them next, and like I think Vicky says that, oh, should we take the next step? Or he says, should we take? I think it's Kevin because he's always talking about the next step, isn't he? He said it with those boys at the beginning. He's now saying it with Vicky, like, oh, should we take the next step? Isn't it out? Exactly how you imagine then from outside the door you hear some guy going, oh my god, my farts stink, or something like that, and then like she ends up going down on him, he comes in the beer, and then Stifler breaks in the room and he shouts, suck me beautiful, like he doesn't even realize what's happened. He's just like recounting like Ozzy's story and catchphrase again. They leave the room, as you mentioned before, like Stifler starts to talk this girl into bed. Like he starts to kind of manipulate her a little bit. He's saying like, "Oh, I would never say like tell stories about you," because she's like, "Oh, I'm just going to be some chick that you hooked up with," and he's trying to manipulate her and say like, "Oh no, I would never do that." But obviously, straight away, he gets his comeuppance. I mean, excuse the pun. The deliveries are absolutely perfect, and obviously he ends up drinking the beer and ends up being sick and all that stuff, and that's one of the huge gross out moments this movie is. Like now I see it coming and I expect it coming, so it doesn't affect me too much now. But when I was a kid and I used to watch that, like I was like, oh, I can't believe he would can't believe do that. But next is like one of the famous scenes in not just this, but like any film I've ever seen, and it's the debut of the word MILF. Yeah, so he's looking at a picture of Stifler's mom. He's like, man, Stifler's mom's hot. She's a MILF. What's that? Mom, I'd like to fuck, and all this stuff. And it's, yeah. And like, this is, I mean, apparently the word was like known before, but it wasn't obviously as huge as it is now. But American Pie basically made a term in real life. And this is one of the two huge things that came from this film. We'll get to the other one later on. But this is one of the two huge things that like came from this film, the word MILF. And like, it's in like, I feel like every generation has its teenage film, and like this was obviously our generation's teenage film. Before this, they had the Molly Ringwald stuff, and like for the generation before us, and we always look back at our films and go, "Oh, wasn't our film like really good for our generation, like in terms of like a representation of that time?" But, like the fact that it created this term MILF is kind of like transcends cinema, basically, doesn't it? We get to the end of the party, everyone goes home. These boys have stayed the night, they've all like slept together on the sofas or whatever. Now that is the realistic part of the film, sleeping on the floor. Not in a huge big house, but you know what I mean. So the central chick, she leaves, Sherman hugs her goodbye. The boys are led to believe that like Sherman's lost his virginity. So this is when Kevin does it. Kevin says, listen, we need to make a pact that by prom we're all in it. And I'm watching this as a child, and I'm thinking, is this what I'm supposed to do? I mean, obviously, I realise that they're 17 and not like their high school doesn't finish at 16 like ours. But I'm thinking, like, am I supposed to lose my virginity by 18? And, like, I'm 12 at this point. I'm like, oh, that gives me 6 years. Am I supposed to make a pact with my friends? Are they supposed to help me? Like, what's the process? I don't understand. And I'm watching this, and I'm like, this is like. It was interesting to me, and like one thing that I did appreciate in this is the camaraderie between friends. I did appreciate that aspect of it. Well, to be honest with you, I mean, I don't know about now what teenagers are like now, but I kind of feel like that's what teenagers are like, aren't they? Because let's be honest, we've kind of got a one-track brain at that point. Especially, I mean, I can only speak for the people that I knew. Like, they've all decided that they're going to lose their virginity. I mean, there are issues in the fact that like they're making a pact and what lengths they're going to go to do it, and they all said consensual sex, so and then so they're all going like the different ways about it. So obviously Kevin's already got his girlfriend, and he's trying to grovel to her because like he's upset her at the party. Jim signs up for an online dating, which is way ahead of his time. Like we're talking 99, that's way ahead of his time. And then Finch goes one route, which I thought was like quite interesting. Actually, this is something that I never thought of anyone doing besides this film. Is that rather than him going out to get girls, he just tries to improve his reputation, like falsely, and just tries to tell people that he's got a tattoo because he's talking about a lot of shallow things. He doesn't seem to be really overly manipulating people. He's just telling people very shallow things about him, like, "Oh, I want to fight against someone," or "I've got a tattoo." Right. So the next scene that we see is Kevin and he's reading advice, and like one thing leads to another. They have a little conversation, and Kevin's brother exposes him to the Bible. Now, the Bible is like, I like the concept of a Bible type thing, not in terms of like a sex. I just mean like passed down from like one person to another to another. Like it doesn't have to be about sex. It can be about anything. It can be about baseball. I like that, like the concept that this secret manual has been handed to another to help them with something.
Handed down from pervert to pervert over the.
And that's what it becomes with the sex thing, doesn't it? Because it's a sex book, it's like a pervert to pervert, yeah. So like, yeah, he's got this book, and like, yeah, go on, I'll let you take it away.
Oh well, the book, which what is it says? The quote is, "It started as a sex manual from Amsterdam because, like, back in those days, Amsterdam was sort of like this, weird and kooky place and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're going to get a sex manual from anywhere, it's going to be somewhere like India, where they have like the Kama Sutra and things like that. But just the scenes, like, like, because this is the thing, like, this is what I've learned about sex, like from experience, because I don't want to put any of your podcast fans off, but I've actually had some sex in my time. I've done the sex, and what breaking news. Tom has had the sex. Like, take that, childhood bullies. See, I did do it. Just took me a lot longer. But like what I've learned about sex is that every woman is actually different, and you can't really like the whole scene with like the tongue twister sort of thing, like as if that was like as if it's sort of like a move that just works on every girl. Like,
sure,
it may not work. Like, like sometimes you'll be like, oh, this really got that other chick off the other day or whatever, and then you try it with a different girl, and they're just not that into it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so it's not really.
Yeah, like this works on your cousin, but it's not working on your sister. That kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know I'm Welsh, but calm down.
No, definitely not. Yes, it's one of those things where it's like I say, I like the idea of something being passed down, but the fact that it's a sex, all that stuff is just like,
and it doesn't really come up again in the film, which is
it
weird.
doesn't.
Like, it only comes the way that the brother explained it as well. I thought it was really funny. Like the brother sort of, they never really say what his job is, but you have to assume that he works in finance because he's having a meeting in a sushi restaurant.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's like,
definitely, and I kind of felt like it was perfect for a callback. At least do it in the next film, or like the wedding. I mean, he wasn't in the wedding, was he? But like doing like a future film, like give us a callback at some point, because I think
there was, I believe there was a straight to DVD or straight to VHS American Pie about the sex Bible. I think
there was actually right. It was called The Book of Love. I don't remember it, but like
the Book of, I didn't watch it now.
Yeah, I know it exists. But the next scene is the scene. Jim fucks a pie, and right, let's talk about this. So, first of all, your mum's cooked you a pie, and you decided
a lovely pie,
a homemade dessert. She made it for everyone, the whole family to enjoy, and you've decided that, like, in the middle of the day with the curtains open, you're going to climb on the desktop in the kitchen. You're not going to take it to your bedroom and close the curtains and like get under the covers or nothing. You're going to fuck the pie, like.
And I think that moment speaks volumes to what I was saying earlier about what you're like at that age, because of the amount of testosterone going through your body, and it's not sort of something. It's just genuinely not something that sort of talks
it's not
about.
A thought out plan.
You don't have a thought out plan. That's the thing. You just you do things on impulse. At that age, you're far more impulsive. You just do things, and you get it, and then you like learn lessons really quickly. But yeah, like I said, there's the two different versions. The one where he's just in the corner fucking it, which is the one on the Netflix, and then the one which is because I watched that and I was just like, that wasn't how I remember it. Have I got a really weird? Because you know how sometimes you try to remember back something that you from like your teenage years, and then it's just like, oh no, that never happened. You
The
just
Mandela
remembered.
effect.
Yes, exactly, the Mandela effect. I was just double checking that. But personally, the scene after that, where this is the thing, where when you look at it through an adult eye, you no longer see it as like, and then Jim and his dad have a little talk. What you see is Jim and his dad are sitting on another different table, possibly in the dining room, with the pie
in front of them.
that Jim had his penis in, his erect penis in the middle of the table, this new table. So they've taken the pie and they've moved it. So I don't know if Jim's dad has picked it up, whatever. Like, he had no problem in picking up a condom in the previous scene that may or may not have been used. I don't know. He just goes, oh, better than a tube sock. But like, like, if we just go, this posh wank, he's wanking to a condom. But yeah, they have that thing, but just like, it's like the scene in Ghostbusters when they're in the elevator and they're just talking about how dangerous the backpacks are. Like, there's about like 14 words spoken in the whole scene, and the scene lasts about 3 or 4 minutes. So there's not much said, but it's all like this sort of context. And I personally, when they're just sitting around it and they're not saying anything, and then it's clearly the end of the conversation where the dad just goes, well, we'll just tell your mother that we ate it all.
Yeah.
and it ends with Jim just sort of looking at him like, just sort of like, you're fucking weird for saying that.
There's only one thing that I thought was missing from this is I would have liked to have seen, you know, like at the end of film sometimes you see like extra deleted scenes or whatever. I would have liked to have seen a scene with like the mum finding the pie in the trash or whatever and being really confused. And that's all it needed to be. It would have been a nice little callback and like just her seeing like a broken up pie. Like that's the pie that I spent hours making that for the whole family. You two greedily said that you ate it all, but it's here in the bin. What happened to it? But I would have liked to see that.
You would have just liked seeing the horror on her face.
Yeah, like the confusion, the upsetness, like all that. But anyway, so the next scene is like
like when she like gets it and she's like, "Do they not like my pie?"
Yeah.
No, Moira, we really love your pie.
a bit
too much. It a bit too much. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So the next scene, I mean, we've missed a little bits out here and there, but it wasn't really too important. But basically, the next scene is like the quiet chick. She goes to like Oz's like lacrosse game, and she invites him to the prom. He says, "Yeah, he'll go to the prom with her," but then she sees like Stifler like taking the piss out of her. So straight away, she kind of like rescinds it in her mind, but doesn't tell him. And then we move on.
Which I thought was a bit harsh, considering all he was doing was just sort of grimacing.
Yeah, like, exactly.
He wasn't like joining in and being like, "Yeah, dude, I'm gonna totally bat her," blah blah. Like, he was just sort of grimacing, which again, well, I think that's like that just, you know, that's a man writing for a woman's feelings there. That's why you need like more diversity in the writers' room, because you have a woman who can just be like, well, no, she probably wouldn't take it quite like that. She might like take it in a bad way, but she might, you know, it might like be handled differently or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. Like, because just looking at it, you're looking at it like Stifler's the arsehole there, and he's not really doing anything. So like, you wouldn't punish one guy for the crimes of someone else. But next we see like what do we see next? So Nadia basically says that, oh, Jim, like, you're really good at the English studies or whatever. Like, can I come over after ballet practice and all this stuff? And then in between, the boys talk Jim into broadcasting Nadia over the internet. So, I mean, there's so much here.
It's Stifler's idea originally.
Yeah, but even Finch is like, he's got a point, and like even Shipwreck thinks I've got a point, and like they're all kind of guilty here because no one really stands up and says, "No, you shouldn't do this, Jim." It sounds something like really illegal, and like I wouldn't want to do that to another person. Could you imagine if someone did that to you? How like None of
I
that's
think
brought up.
again,
It's all just like, oh my god, you should do it so we can see breasts. Like,
this
oh,
is
like
yeah. Well, this is the thing. Is it's sort of it's presented in a way that sort of it's not even though it is really seedy and it is like illegal and stuff like that. It's not presented in that way. You know
no,
what I
it's
mean?
presented as an opportunity.
It's presented as like this opportunity, like this. You know, how are you going to possibly turn down this excuse? But then as well, the behavior of Nadia in that again is sort of a male writing for a female role, but from like the male's perspective,
Yeah,
where she starts getting undressed, and then she just sort of like walks around the room naked for a little
yeah,
bit, and then finds the porn and starts to masturbate. Like she didn't say, "Oh, I'm gonna take half an hour" or anything like that. It's
sure.
not as if like she's he's got an ensuite and there's a shower in his room. The whole scene doesn't make any sense, and I think it's just an excuse for us to see her terrific and tremendous breasts because pushing all of that aside and this actor does have a tremendous pair of breasts, and I will go on the record in saying that I approve of those messages.
To be honest, she has a great body. She has a tremendous body. There's no getting around that. But I mean,
Yeah,
like, oh, it's just like watching this back as an adult, and I'm like, oh my god,
yeah.
like, how could you? Because it's framed in a way like, oh my god, this is such a great opportunity. How can you capitalize this on the most? So like, he's like, oh, maybe I should show her naked and like broadcast it to you. And then obviously he makes the mistake and he broadcasts it to everyone. And then he's
Yeah.
there and he's trying to watch you getting naked, and then like obviously she finds the porn and all that stuff, and then like I think Kevin says, "This
Well,
is your
there's
chance. Go
even
over and ask if she needs a hand."
well, that's the thing is like that's the kind of like they're kind of pornographizing. Is that a word? Yeah, pornographizing their lives, their life.
Sure.
That's the point that I keep making is like just how much testosterone in your Dr. Drew is the name of the he's an actual genuine doctor, and he specializes in addictions and sexual health disorders and stuff like that. And he is always saying, like, at that age, when you are that age, you are just so full of testosterone. You will do stupid things. You will say stupid things, and if left unchecked, because this is the main thing, is that they are all sort of left unchecked in their way. And even though
Still encouraging it.
character really does try, he tries his absolute hardest to talk to Jim about these things and
Yeah.
stuff like that. It's just it's impossible. So they make these horrendous mistakes in this brave new world where they have new technology and stuff like that to do these sorts of things. So that's what I'm saying. Like the way that she behaves, and it's not real. Like it's more fake than pornography almost, because it's presented to be real.
Sure. And hey, not only that, I mean, let's talk about 1999, okay? And like this was filmed in probably 1998. How can anyone have that kind of quality of streaming something live in 1998?
That's very true. But I guess it was America, but no. Even like I've got down here, like even though you would say that it was quite quality, like I would still say that it was still pretty much 1 pixel per tit in that video that we saw. Which
I mean, of course, it wasn't like great, like streaming, like smooth as like Netflix nowadays or whatever. But like, it's all unrealistic. But it's when he's running to like my Blink 182. Oh, what a tune!
It is, and it's great. This film has a great soundtrack, and also in that scene where they then like you find out that other people are watching it.
Mm-hmm.
That is Blink 182 with the monkey.
It is Blink 182. Me and Andrew Marsh mentioned that in our podcast episode about Blink 182. So if anyone listening there, go check that one out.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was one of those scenes as a kid that was like, it was very much seen. And again, like, it wasn't written very well, but the minimum that they could do was that Jim gets his comeuppance in the video, and his comeuppance is that he finishes it twice by himself, doing nothing. Everyone else sees it. He becomes a laughingstock. But poor Nadia, she gets kicked out of school and deported for it. And it's like,
well,
what?
She was an exchange student, so she was never like, she didn't get deported, and that she was like living there. Not that I'm
Yeah,
excusing it, you know what I mean? Like, let's say she gets deported, but we
still,
know in the future films she doesn't really give a shit, like,
yeah,
about
but
what happened, because she
I
still
know,
wants to meet Jim.
and it's so crazy. Like, someone had brought basically like revenge porned you over the internet without the revenge aspects of it, without your consent. Broadcast you over the internet. You've been kicked out of school. You've been sent back to your country, and you're just like, "Oh no, I've missed my opportunity with Jim." Like, what? It's unrealistic bullshit.
Well, I
Anyway,
guess it's a slightly political message, which was it was to show just how bad things were in the Czech Republic at that time with the regimes that they had. So that was a better alternative to life in the Czech Republic.
and it's just back to America and like sleep with their spotty, nerdy teenage boys. Anyway, we have the diarrhea scene
He
next.
was more pale. He was more pale than spotty. Oh,
He
diarrhea
was.
scene. Okay.
He was. Anyway, we have the diarrhea scene next. Like, Finch, for ages, he said that he can't shit in school. And the irony is that now he has to shit in school, and it's the worst shitting experience that anyone's ever going to have in any school. He finds the toilet. He doesn't even know where the men's toilets are because he doesn't shit in school. Stifler ends up sending toilets. There's girls in there. He has his diarrhea. The two girls run out. Somehow, there's a crowd of about gathered because someone is having like a wild shit, and they're all waiting outside the toilet.
I think Stifler organised that, though. It's quite clear that Stifler was like, "Hey guys, he's coming. He's gone into the wrong bathroom. Let's all give him a round of applause." And I think that the because Stifler holds the parties, he's like the party boy. Like, everyone sort of, even though he's a massive knobhead, everyone
He's
just
a ringleader.
Yeah, he's a ringleader. But like, you just get, what's funny about that scene is that when he's running and he's farting, then there's a song playing in the background, and the song is actually Classical Gas.
How is it?
There's a really subtle joke there, which I'd never noticed, obviously, because I didn't. But I remember just thinking, I know that riff. Where's that riff from? Oh my God, it's from Classical Gas. Oh my God, Classical Gas. That's really funny to be playing along to the soundtrack. But there was a few jokes that we've skipped over where when Jim comes back into school, somebody goes, "Hey, Minuteman!" I thought that was a really funny joke.
Oh yeah, and there's a lot of those little Easter eggs where like people are like pointing at him the same way that he was pointing at Nadia when he said like, "Hey, can you use a hand like with the two gun finger kind of things?" There's a lot of stuff in there, yeah. And like next up, we see like. Ollie had this big moment where like he realizes that the big music recital is on the same day as the lacrosse team's like final game of the season. Now, I'm going to address this as like a teammate of Oz's because I mean I played hockey in university and like I can only imagine that if on my last game of my last season one of my teammates decided that he was no longer going to play and he was going to leave the game halfway through because he wanted to go sing, I would have been so fuming with my teammate. It would have been ridiculous. The fact that he chooses her though over the game is very lovely, very nice.
What's funny is that the coach is actually the one who ends up convincing him with his whole 9 yard speech.
You don't score until you score and all that stuff, yeah.
which is so dumb.
It is.
It's such a dumb speech.
It's to the point of parody over sports coaches, isn't it? I feel like I feel like they're kind of poking fun at it a little bit. But yeah, now we get to like the prep for prom. So like Kevin feels like everything's like slowly falling apart. Like everyone's moving away from the parts, and he's trying to like tell people that like, oh, you can't, and all this stuff. What else is happening?
The Dad and Jim scene where he's like, I know that Eugene Levy's character knows that he's like, he's going to this prom a boy,
yeah,
and he's coming back a man. Like it's obvious, and they have this hug, which is such a dad hug, where he's just like he's hugging him, and there's the tapping on the back. You know, when you're hugging someone, you just tap them on the back. And there's so many taps, and they keep going back and forward with this tap thing, and I was just like, oh my God, that is so. This is such a that is probably the most genuine moment in film, of any film of that era. Like, it's just so, even though it's just like that tiny little bit, it's just so, it's truthful and it's honest and it's raw, and I like it.
And like, there's all those.
This is a great film. This is a great film.
Eugene's saying about about his brother Morty likes to pet the one-eyed snake like 5 times a day, and like,
Oh my
oh,
god, yeah.
you want a partner, don't you? It's like racquetball. You want a partner, don't you? Yeah, Dad, I want a partner. Yeah, you do. Okay, cool,
You
cool.
can hit a ball against the wall and it's fun, but it's not a game.
Yeah. Which it wouldn't surprise me if like all of Eugene's stuff was all ad-libbed, like, and
I would. Oh yeah,
very
totally.
little.
I would love. I would love to see like a film. I would love to see that film remade, but only from Eugene Levy's perspective.
Yeah,
like when you see what he's having a whole other like life. Like he's having problems at work. You know, he's trying to keep
sure.
the
Yeah,
mother at bay, like the stressful mother who like no, I think he's trying to watch illegal channels because that's like the last time we see her basically. The only time
yeah.
we see her is we see the pie that she made. It is just the dad. The dad's clearly just gone like, look, I will deal with this. And she's like pressuring him and stressing him out. I think that's a much better film. If I'm being honest, that's a film that
Hey,
I know that he was in the later films, wasn't he?
it
But I
was.
never
Yeah.
really I only saw the second and the third one. I didn't watch any of the Bandcamp ones or anything like that.
Oh, did you
Like,
not? Well, we'll touch on those later on then.
yeah,
Right, so we'll just jump back into the film then. So we get to the prom. Everyone finds out that like, what's it called? Sherman didn't have sex with everyone. She says that one time he tried to fuck a grapefruit and all that stuff. And then this is where like Kevin feels like it's all falling apart. The bond between like the 4 friends is kind of starting to fade.
well, the truth behind what made them get to that pact was Sherman. So
With Sherman, yeah.
when they find out that that's a lie, they're all sort of because in fairness, like in the scene with Oz where he's with that college chick, and he is just basically being a sociopath in the way that he's speaking to her. Like he will just
Sure.
he will just say anything he can to get what he wants.
Yep.
And he will manipulate the situation. Luckily for everyone involved, the college chick is just like, I remember that high school spiel. I'm not falling for that.
She's
shit
smarter
again.
than him. She's more experienced. Yeah,
Exactly. Again, the female being presented as a smarter than the man, which is a running theme in this film. But I genuinely thought that he was like a psychopath in that sort of thing where he would just literally do. But he really does actually genuinely grow throughout the whole film. And what made me laugh though about the prom scene was when even though Finch is so ostracized, they still have him in a white suit, whereas everyone else is in a black suit. But he's in a white suit, black tie. Everyone else is a black suit, white shirt. But even though he's like fully ostracized, he still wants to stand out as different. You know what I mean?
mm-hmm.
And
Definitely.
I thought that was quite funny. Or it's just like a nod to the fact that he had already hired the suit, like so he's just having to sit there in his decision, which is making things worse.
Yeah.
But yeah,
really interesting that I hadn't thought of is like the whole point they made the pacts was because of Sherman, and then they're all kind of bit down in the dumps, and then they find out Sherman didn't really have sex, and they kind of all like get the mood up a little bit. Right, this is it. Let's go to the post prom party. This is what we've been waiting for. We're going to go to the party, and we'll at least have a nice time going to the party. At this point, they kind of put to one side the idea of like any of them having sex. They kind of just saying, let's just enjoy the party.
Well, that's where Jim comes in, and he has a rant, and he's just like, I hate this. I haven't even had sex, and I already hate it. Which is again, that's a very Jewish comedy sort of thing to say in that little thing, and it really spoke to me. But when he says, when the band, because this is when we find out about Sherman. The band goes like, okay, we're going to take a break, guys. Thank you very much. After they were singing like some proper 80s music. And then there's no like, they don't like put a CD on. They just leave the stage. And then Sherman, would be girlfriend just sort of takes the mic. And I know that you know what I mean when I say like, if I was running that gig, you'd be like, okay, we're going to take a break. Here's some, now 52 or whatever it was back then. But no, there's no music. The band's just like, okay, go fuck yourself. We'll see you in a bit. Like,
At the very least, you would turn the mic and just leave the live mic on the stage, and then just be like, hey, yeah, we'll just leave the stage wide open and the mic on, and anyone can do whatever they want.
Oh God. Oh my God. Oh yeah. Also, something else I've got written down. Did you notice Jim's suit?
No, go on.
So like they're all wearing modern suits, but he's wearing a suit from the 70s, like, which is an old cut, and it's quite clear that it's his dad's old suit, and I just thought that was really cool. Like, he's got like the 70s, like, sort of Austin Powers ruffles. It's like a light blue suit, and it's flared trousers, and that was definitely like a hand me down from his dad, and I just thought that was really cute. And again, speaks to like the Jewish roots of there, like, because it's not really. It's only ever hinted at. It's not. They're never actually like confirmed, but it's obvious. But yeah.
Man, I've seen this film probably about 30 to 50 times in my life, and I've never known. I'm gonna have to look that up later. It's really interesting. So
yeah, no, I noticed it last night.
yeah, man, that's cool. Yeah. So Jim says, right, I'm gonna go in there and get my coat, maybe my date, perhaps, and like they go in, they all go to the party, and then
I love that.
Yeah, because he's given up all hope of like all the things that they wanted to do and all the things they wanted to achieve in terms of the. They kind of given up on it, but like he's still going to be like an honest enough guy to be like, I said to you that I'll take you to the party.
Yeah,
let's go to the party.
Yeah, that's something that we haven't really discussed is Alison Hannigan and how she just really wants to get to the party. So she's using him.
She is.
The female is the smarter in the thing. I really don't want to use the word female too often because apparently that's a thing nowadays that people go, oh, he's referring to women as females. That's a simp or an incel thing. I don't know. But yeah.
I kind of feel like in the context of this is a very direct split between the male characters and the female characters, or boy characters and girl characters, however you want to say it. I'm no expert personally, but I think that's reasonable.
Well, when they're walking into the party, because she keeps on going like, in this one time at band camp, which is still something that people were like.
There we go. We've just hit on it. Earlier on, I said two films really have test of time that was created by this film, really. And it's this. This is the
MILF, and there's one time at band camp, yeah.
Because any time in your life that you say to someone, especially our age,
one time,
they'll be like, "Oh yeah, this one time at band." Like you could be trying to have a serious conversation. You could be talking about when your granddad died. This one time when my granddad. It doesn't matter. They're going to be like, oh, this one time at band camp, like
you'll say this one time, and then they'll go at band camp, and you'll be like,
"Yep, exactly." It's huge, and this is the way for this party is. There's no real party scene here. It's just kind of like a hotel base that they all go back to because they all separate into rooms, don't they? They don't all go and like gather in one space and like have a party together. They all just go off to rooms and like
it's basically a wedding venue.
Yeah, all separate off. So Finch, he finds like a billiards room by himself. He ends up running into Stifler's mom, and then Michelle has this whole like we hear that infamous line. This one time at band camp, I stuck a flute on my pussy, and like Jim spits his drink out, and then we knew all along.
I don't know if this is a Mandela effect thing again, like you said, or if it's just from the unrated version, but I swear she said cunt. She said, I stuck a flute up my cunt, and it felt so good. Like, that's, I swear that. Am I wrong?
Not from my recollection, no. It's always been pussy, yeah.
No, maybe it's just somebody was repeating it back to me, and then I sort of, yeah. But what made me laugh about that scene is when she's telling him all these stories, and then she's like, I feel like I'm always telling you stories. Like, do you have any stories? And he's just like, okay, well, Stifler drinks this beer, which is that's the end of the story.
Yeah.
There's like 10 more words to that story, and then it leads them all the way back to the couch. And then she turns out to be a fucking sex pest herself. And she's just like, so we're going to screw soon because I'm getting kind of antsy. And yeah.
And it's a great I can't think of the term, but it's a great character arc for her, because when we first see her in the start of the film, she's like the nerd Bandcamp girl. She's been turned away from the party. She's been invited to the prom as a last resort. Very low status all the way through, and then
she's more experienced than all of them.
exactly. They're all looking on her that's got the thing that they all want and been doing the thing that they all want. They all want to be like her in the end of the day. And then when she finally gives Jim the thing that he wants, she leaves, and then he's really, really excited. So now we meet Syphilis, and she basically seduces Finch. We also see Kevin and Vicky. Their character arcs, they've kind of crossed over, because at the start of them, she wanted him to say "I love you," and he wanted to. By the end, he's saying "love you," and she's having the sex. And then at the end, she's saying, "Well, I think we're going to have to break up now." And then
I thought that was proper. I thought that was proper fucking rude of her, to be honest. She spent the entire film convincing him to go the next step, and then as soon as he says "I love you," but he gets what he wants as well, I guess. She's just like, "Yeah, we're going to have to break up."
Yeah.
And if you can imagine Tara Reid at that point breaking up with you, that would be pretty. That would suck.
especially if you're Kevin, and like Kevin, you've probably not got much better. You've peaked, basically. You've peaked. That's the top of your game.
Yeah, I thought what was funny was I was watching TikToks, so occasionally I'd have to take a break. One of the TikToks I watched was it was definitely like a high school football player proposing to one of the cheerleaders, and I was just thinking that isn't the sort of decision you want to be making at that age, man. Especially because hey man, yeah, you both look like that now, but give it 15 years and see how you both look like then, because you got a gut and so is she. You know what I mean? So if most of the attraction is physical at that age, which it is, because that's just how your bodies work at that age, then bad decision. But you never know.
And then we see All Striker as well, all the way through the film. Not all the way through. At the beginning of the film, we had him as this Casanova type character. He can get the girl, but he's the one that did this sex. He's confident enough to not even. At the start, he was all about telling people I've got this date with the college chick and all this stuff, telling a story of failure, and now he's not even going to tell them if he's had success or if he's not success, if they had sex, if they didn't have success.
Well, do you think they definitely had sex, right?
I'm sure they did, yeah.
I'm sure they did. But what I liked as well about that little sequence when they all kind of have sex and stuff like that, apart from Jim getting thrown about the room like a proper lad, I like when Tara Reid and Kevin and the guy, when they were having sex, it was actually quite realistic. In not that I've never been with a girl where it's been her first time, stuff like that. But I can sort of imagine what it would be like, and she's sort of wincing at first, and then sort of kind of gets into it and stuff. But it's not really gratuitous in any way. But it's sort of it's a good little surface level visualization of what that sort of thing would be like. Awkward, kind of painful, ultimately not satisfying. And maybe that's why she broke up with him, because of how bad he was in bed.
Very possibly. But this is one of the reasons why I did like this film at the time, was because it showed all these different experiences of having very similar experiences. So they're all trying to lose the virginity, but there's a million different ways that can happen, from doing it with the older woman, Jim doing it with the woman the same age but she's more experienced. Did he do it? Did he not do it? It's never made abundantly clear, but he doesn't want to tell anyone because that's private. That's completely to him. And then you've got the couple who've been together about a year or more than a year, and they're going to do it both together for the first time. And they're going to have that experience together. So I really did like that. It all wasn't the same thing, for example. It all wasn't all going to Amsterdam and all getting a prostitute or whatever. It wasn't
exactly. In the same way, Eurotrip is kind of a little bit like that. I know what you mean.
But, it's they're all having different experiences. That's an interesting film.
It's one of those films, especially if you set it out and you it's the sort of film that your parents would disapprove of, But then if
Sure.
they actually sat down and watched it with you, they'd see if they were actually watching it, they'd see the same perspective that we're seeing it now. In basically, like, there's a lot more subtext to it. There's a lot more, like, there is a little bit of subtlety in it at times, but it's still a proper problematic film. Like when we're just around that one webcam scene, that's just, yeah, you can't be doing that.
More than, yeah, exactly that. I mean, that's mainly about illegal, but I mean, yeah, on the surface of this film, it's very, very like it's lads, they don't want to lose the virginity, they don't care how they're willing to, like, kind of help each other in a way of, like, kind of manipulate the situation and dramatic on the surface of it. But when you dive a bit deeper, you can theming aspects to the film, and, like, it's one that I don't feel too bad being a fan of it still, but I'm definitely not a fan of it the same way I would have been when I was like a 12-year-old and I was seeing it from a completely different perspective.
Yeah, well, it was when you said, like, who's a fan of these things, and one of them was American Pie. I replied, I'm a reformed fan of this film, because I was a fan, you know, there was a time, but I can't really consider myself, like, rewatching it. I'm glad I kind of rewatched it, because, like, there's tiny little things like Jim Stu, classical gas being played whilst he was farting and stuff like that. Those little things, I'm like, oh, okay, I can appreciate that more now, you know, and there was a little bit more thought put into it than I thought. But, you know, I don't think I'll be watching it again for a long time.
Sure. So let's do a bit of like a roundup of it then. So, like, what did you think of the casting? Because I'll be honest with you, I think the cast is pretty much perfect. There's no one here thought they could have been done with change.
If you were asking me who I would have cast differently, I probably would have cast Stifler's mum differently.
Really?
If I would have had any choice of because that I think more because what that actor then went on to do, like like I remember that actress being in a lot of different sitcoms, but her always playing like a really loud mouth, sort of awkward person. She was always like that. She was always speaking like this.
Yeah.
And it really took away from the fact that that's the character she played in American Pie. Was really reserved and really sexual and really mysterious and stuff like that. Like, if I was going to, like, recast that part, I probably would have put what's her name from Baywatch in?
Pamela Anderson.
Pamela Anderson, because Pamela Anderson has the capabilities of being a really quiet. Like, if you've seen some of her films and stuff like that, she can be, like, really quiet, really sexual, and really that. And I think, like, that, and she was still pretty spot on in 1998 or whatever when it was filmed. So I probably would have recast that. Finch as well. If I'm being honest, looking at Finch, I reckon that role could have been played by a lot of different people. Like, I don't think there's anything that actor particularly brought to the role. And I think maybe it was because it was one of the more subtle roles, but maybe it could have been played a little bit better. Like, he's kind of like a young Rowan Atkinson in that,
that's true.
in that respect, in the way that he did it. But he looks like a young Rowan Atkinson, but he doesn't act like a young Rowan Atkinson, really. What you want is someone who can do something big with within the small boundaries of that part and that role and stuff like that. But yeah, Sean William Scott, Jason Biggs, Alison Hannigan, Tara Reid, Natasha Leon, absolute bangers, and of course the person who makes this film for me, which is Eugene Levy. He is perfect. He's just without Eugene Levy, I don't think this film would have worked, personally.
So, how about the follow-ups then? We'll just briefly touch on the follow-ups, because we've already talked a lot about this film in general, so we don't need to go too deep into it. So what did you think of, like, American Pie 2?
I remember it being a lot more sexual. That's what I remember it. I remember it just being like, you know, just like they'd spent the entire first film looking for sex, and but then there was the more subtext and more like, you know, growing up sort of thing. But then I felt like the second film was just all about getting laid. Like, there was no other, like, things, you know, and they had the scene with, like, you know, the quote unquote lesbians and stuff like that. I think it was just a lot more sexual. I think the second film was definitely just like, oh, let's just make another one of these. I don't know if they use the same director or writers or whatever, but it just felt a lot different to me personally.
And what did you think about The Wedding?
I remember the wedding film, but I was like slightly older when I watched it because I didn't watch out. There was a part of me that was just like, oh, why just watch all three films? You're going to be up that late anyway. Why don't you just watch all three films first? After I watched the first film, I tried to stick the second film on, and just the music came on, and I was just like, no, I can't deal with two of these in one night.
Yeah.
I can't. So I watched some stand up or whatever. I tried to watch Jerry Seinfeld stand up, but the third one I remember being a lot more story based and just, you know, the whole awkwardness of Jim. But what I remember most of all about the third one is just how annoying Stifler was in the whole of it.
Right.
If you remember that, I don't know, but I just remember just his character had gone from this sort of like, yeah, bro, to like this deliberately spoil the party, almost as if he's like got extreme ADHD. He can't stop himself. Like he's from continuing in his compulsions and stuff like that. That's what I remember of that story. And Alison Hannigan just being a little bit of a crush of mine, to be honest.
Right. And did you see the reunion?
I did not.
Right.
What was that like?
So I mean, it was okay. It was all right. I don't really remember talking and like some like blow up films that they did like in between. Kind of like they still call American Pie. It's like Bandcamp and stuff like that. I thought Bandcamp was actually okay, but in the Book of Love and some of those other ones, I don't even remember the names of them. Yeah, not yet. So what's overall? We're talking about American Pie 1. What do you think its legacy is?
I think it's a really good example of the sort of mentalities. Like that's what I've said from the start. It's a really good example of the sort of mentalities that people had back in those days. So like, you know, you had music videos like Christina Aguilera Dirty coming out, which was basically just softcore pornography.
Sure.
Played on, you know, on MTV and stuff like that. Jackass was just coming out as well. Like people were just, you know, dumb boys doing dumb things for money. You know, it's a bit of a time capsule of that year, basically. Although you know, coming up to the millennium, and then since then, it's just been, I guess you could call it uphill, but sometimes it seemed like a bit of a downhill struggle coming uphill. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure, definitely. And overall, then, what would you rate this film out of 10?
What I would have when I first saw it originally, I probably would have rated it an 8 or a 9, but I didn't know what I was talking about then. Looking at this film now, I'd probably give it a solid 5.5.
Right.
Because, just because, like, you know, without those little tiny subtle bits and stuff like that, it would be like a 2 or a 3. But with the subtleties and stuff like that, you know, I think it's there. But the whole rounding out of the story, like it could be done a lot better nowadays, I think.
Yeah, very possibly. I like to see this film very much time capsule. I see it as very much a reflection of that late 90s kind of. They kind of pushed the boat, pushed the envelope in terms of a teen comedy, and they kind of pushed it into the new millennium. So I do respect it for that. So I'd probably give it more of like a 9 out of 10 because for its time, I think this is like a seminal film of like the late 90s, especially when it comes to teenage films. And like this came about at a time for me when I was young and I was old. It made an impact on me. I don't think it, but I think it definitely made an impact on me in the sense of when I saw it, I was like, wow, that's like a really strong piece of cinema, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the things that, like we say, came out of it still, like the term MILF and the term like this weekend, like those things like still stick around today. So I do think it's very powerful in that sense. There's a lot of things in it that are problematic and like we probably could have gone in far more detail about a lot of it, but we would be here for a long, long time too. Because there's a lot. I mean, even just that one scene, where the camera scene where he's broadcasting of the incident. I mean, there's so much that is problematic with it, but to kind of put that, I mean, you should suicide. You have to kind of touch on it, and we have touched on it, but to kind of look at it as a whole package and encapsulate it all for the night, I'd give it that 9 still.
If you put it in the context and the time and that it was, and that's why I kept on saying about the just hypersexualization of everyone at that time. But there has been many different films made from the American Pie. So we've got American Pie, American Pie 2, American Pie Presents The Naked Mile, American Pie Presents Beta House, American Pie Presents The Book of Love, American Pie Presents Bandcamp, and then the American Pie Reunion, or it calls American Reunion. But there's a new film that I've just seen that is being made, and it's called American Pie Presents Girls Rules.
Right. I've never heard about that.
So
maybe that's going to be
a girl. It's supposed to be coming. It's supposed to be coming out this year. So maybe this is going to be a turning point for the American Pie saga, as it were.
Very possibly, but do you know what? I imagine that's going to be like a straight to DVD. But I mean, it might be good still. It might be good, but I mean, I'll very much give it a go. I'll probably give it a watch. I don't know what to expect. But yeah, anything else you want to talk about before we get off?
I think we've talked about American Pie for enough. Other than wishing you a merry summer, a happy lockdown.
Cheers, mate. So, is there anything?
Oh, I didn't catch that. What was that?
Is there anything you want to plug? Go.
I've got nothing on at the moment. There's nothing happening. I've got nothing on, and even though they're putting out for paid work at the moment, I really don't think that I'm going to get up and running again until the open mic scene comes back, because I was just enjoying, like, as much as like it was frustrating to turn up to a gig and there'd like not be any people there or anything like that. I was really enjoying like, okay, if there's only 5 people in this audience, if I can make all of those 5 people laugh at once for the entire 10 minutes of my set, then I'm doing well. And then I was getting paid work, and then I was going into that, and it was like that confidence was feeding into the paid work, so I wasn't taking the paid work as seriously as seriously, to the point where it was actually detrimental to the performance. You know what I mean? But so nothing to plug other than just keep supporting live comedy when it comes back. Go to the open mic. Don't talk. Just listen.
Hopefully things are back to normal soon, and we can all go outside and to enjoy. Well, I was going to say enjoy the sunshine, but I honestly think by the time we are allowed outside, it's going to be winter and it's going to be absolutely freezing. But Tom, thank you very much for joining me today, mate.
Cheers, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.